Jason, we're back.
Let's do
Another
it.
episode of our Homeownership 360 video project here. We were just talking about this market. It's October, almost Halloween's the last weekday. No, I guess Halloween's this coming Monday. So this weekend, but then Monday is Halloween 2022.
Yep.
And we're getting into the winter market. We're getting into, rates have really just gone up and up and up. Although this week is the first week in a long time we've just had a winning streak a little bit every day this week. We're finally getting a little pullback in this market and rates are starting to stabilize. But today's topic is inspired by a house that you found for sale in Southeast Portland that has an ADU. It's a small, what is it, a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom house plus an ADU?
Yeah, 3-bedroom house with then basically like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath
studio. Yeah. And
it is detached.
A detached ADU, and it's in the Mount Scott neighborhood, kind of Woodstock adjacent.
Yeah.
And but I think this market buyers, this house would be unbelievable for a first-time home buyer. I think it's currently priced in the low 500s.
Yep.
And we were just saying, if you could get $1,000 a month for that ADU, which is probably conservative, you could probably get more for that.
Absolutely.
If you get $1,000 a month, long-term tenant for that ADU, that's equivalent to about $150,000 worth of mortgage power.
Yeah.
So if you're buying this house for $525,000, it's as if, and you installed the renter, it's as if you bought it for $375,000.
Yeah, because most of us that kind of have been around and are really following real estate have a ton of concern about value, right? Like values may, they may go down a few percent here and there as we struggle through rates and wait for that to stabilize. But long term, it's really not a concern. What is a concern right now is affordability, right? With rates where they are,
right? It's
the payment. But to be able to offset that, and that's just long-term, right? The short-term market here is crazy. And in Portland, one way to get by that is to live in the main house. You can short-term an ADU.
Yeah, exactly.
If eventually you made this a rental, the rules also allow long-term renter in one unit, you can short-term the other, and they don't care which. Like you could put somebody in the ADU for $1,000 a month and then rent the main house for, $3,200 a month on short term, or furnished finder where, people, that's now the happy medium for some of these properties is renting them 3 months at a time to travel.
Jason, I didn't even think of that. If you're a first time buyer and this house for $520,000, you could buy it for 3% down in this market. And this house has been on the market for almost a month or more.
And every day, starting on the 18th, they are lowering the price $1,000 a day until it sells.
I don't know what's wrong with. I don't know why this house is not selling.
I had clients tour it. They said the only thing is some of the spaces were small.
Okay.
And I was like,
yeah, it's a small house, but from an affordability standpoint, you could, if you're a single person, you could put 3 or 5% down. Let's say you could buy this house with $20,000, right?
Yep.
Finance the remainder of it, which would probably land you a maybe $4,000 a month payment all in with mortgage insurance and all that. Would you say?
Yep. Probably,
so $4,000 a month roughly, and you go ahead and move into the ADU and have your own little studio apartment, and then you rent out this house. It's a 3-bedroom house. You could probably rent it out for $2,900, or you could just be building equity. And I don't know what your rent is, but there are opportunities like this right now. So the rates are elevated. It does make affordability scary, but the ADU is so valuable. And another thing is that this house is $525,000. You might be listening to this or watching this and realizing like, yeah, I can't afford a $525,000 house. I'm only approved for a $450,000 house. You can now use rental income from ADUs to qualify for the mortgage. That's very new. That just happened
Very
in the
new.
summer of 2022. And
Yep.
a lot of real estate agents don't even know that.
Yep.
So if you're a
And it's
realtor and you have a house that has an ADU, I mean, ADU potential is different, but if it's an actual ADU that's separate and has a kitchen and a separate entrance and all that stuff, you should be advertising, this is an ADU. I'm listing it for 525, but this ADU could get $1,000 a month, which the way it qualifies, would you get 75% of that added to your qualifying income, which would probably allow you to say, show this house to people who are pre-approved to 450. They will qualify for this house.
Well, and it's just so popular right now. I feel like half the people that I meet in any given month right now are looking for some level of house hack. And the danger is often those are first-time home buyers, right? We're trying to bridge the gap between what we want life to look like and what affordability actually looks like today. And so you end up settling oftentimes for a house with an unfinished basement, right? And there's this grandiose plan to turn it into an Airbnb. And the amount of things that can go wrong from the moment you buy a house until you fully convert a basement into an ADU that somebody wants to live in, it is a broad spectrum of things that can go wrong that could all cost a fortune. So things like this that are done and ready to rent just present a real opportunity, I think, long term. And again, Portland, the rental market has likely never been as competitive. I talked to our property manager last week. He runs a little over 300 properties and said he's never had faster and more qualified tenants show up to pick up these places. So just feels like a great opportunity to try and mitigate what feels like a little bit of an affordability issue that we're fighting right now.
I think even if you find a house that doesn't have an ADU, just to plan to have roommates is a great plan in a market like this. Because when rates go down, like maybe you take on you're like, man, I don't want a $4,000 a month mortgage, but that's what I'm looking at. You qualify for it, and maybe you could rent out one of the rooms for $750 a month. Maybe you can rent out 2 rooms for $1,500 and mitigate that. And then when rates go down, you refinance, and then you can maybe kick one of your roommates out or something. I don't know. You can. I think that's a great idea right now. We have to make some sacrifices to get into real estate, and it's worth it. These houses will appreciate. You will look back to the acquisition of this house and say, man, that was a game changer. That everything changed after that. And I'm so glad I did it. I wish I'd done it sooner.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the case for years and years, right? I mean, 2016, it was like, oh, I can't believe you're paying that much to live in that neighborhood. And then in 2018, people are like, oh, I would love to have bought a house for what you bought in 2018. And then in 2020, it was like, I can't, and it's just been that way. And yes, there may be some kind of, temporary pullback. It seems unlikely that it's going to be huge.
I think that's the opportunity. I think that we're experiencing the pullback right now, which is why you can get a house with low cash and get your closing costs covered. You're not competing right now. As soon as rates start coming back down, yes, you'll feel better for affordability, but then all of a sudden you're competing again and prices are getting bid up really fast again. So
competition is going to go through the roof.
It is scary right now, but the inventory is still a problem. And that is it's a major opportunity right now. And I know it's scary. But I think that if you can have a plan to manage the affordability in the short term, and also the temporary interest rate buy down is such a smart strategy too, for managing affordability in the short term. Maybe do a temporary buy down and get a 1 roommate, and then have a temporary buy down means your interest rate is 2 or even 3% below note rate for the first 12 months. And the seller is paying for that.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
if you did a 2-1 buy down on a place like this, you'd save like almost $600 a month on your payment the first year, and you collect that $1,000. That's 20 grand. You could sock away an additional 20 grand in the first year. I mean, that's like the potential that then provides as a jumping off point for whatever was next is really, really impressive.
yeah, I didn't think. Let's think about that. Let's do this $525,000 house, 3% down. Have the seller give you a credit to a 3-1 buy down or a 3-2-1 buy down. That probably is like an $18,000 seller credit would be my guess. And I'm totally guessing, right? Like it would be in that neighborhood of credit would be my guess. I don't have my spreadsheet out. Now you've got, instead of a $4,000 a month payment, it's probably a $3,300 a month. You live in the you live in the studio, and you rent out the house. You might even be able to rent that house for $2,900, and for the first year, you're only paying $400 a month, and you're waiting for rates to improve and to refi.
Yeah.
And you've got your own space. You're building tons of equity. You're in the market anyway. These are the kinds of ideas that first-time home buyers can start imagining right now with little, and that's what all you need is 20 grand, and you can start this. So,
Yeah.
and that can come from a family gift, so you can, if you've got a dream and call us up, we'll help you kind of flesh out the contours, and then you can fill in with your own resources.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think, we talk about this a lot, right? The metaphor of the train, right? The housing market is a train, and everybody who doesn't own is running next to it. Right. But unless you're saving, unless you're socking away about $2,800 a month, you're losing ground on the train. And if that's the case, we just, I feel like I'm like evangelically trying to get people on the train, like get on wherever you can, so that then whatever speed the train is moving, you are moving at least that quickly. And I think if you buy something with an ADU, you're moving faster than the train, because rents over the last couple of years in this area have gone up exponentially. Even with all the controls put in place, the availability of rentals has gone down so much that rent goes up at, staggering amounts. This year, over 14% is, the available rent increase. So
we were just talking before we started recording, we were just talking about rewatching the movie The Big Short, and that episode of, U.S. history, the recent history, and it's still kind of hanging on some people's hearts of that level of pain that can be experienced in real estate. And I think one of the reasons that goes unspoken about why that whole thing happened is demographic. That was the time when the Gen X generation was in their main first-time homebuyer mode, their main household formation mode. And Gen X is a demographic, like, shallow period. The Gen X generation is small compared to the previous generation and compared to the millennial generation that's following. And then after the millennial generation is Gen Z, that's just as big. There's this population boom that's just flooding into the real estate mechanism. And that's what's buoying rates. That's what's buoying prices. I think that when you zoom out, you'll see that real estate is going to continue to hold value, to have moments of extreme appreciation, and ultimately it's still attainable, and it's still something that is an essential part of the American dream. And I think that that's what's going to make it valuable, and that's what's going to continue to make rents go up. And so don't ever underestimate how valuable real estate could be.
Yeah, I think it's just a perfect storm, right? We built half the number of homes we needed to for like 10 straight years. We've got a
Right.
population boom.
The population plus the urban
Yep.
construction policy and the the focus on builders. Builders are much more focused on suburban high end build out. There's maybe going to be an opportunity to get some of that type of property at a discount in the future, because that
Well, and
potentially might be
multifamily
overbuilt.
is what everyone's incentivized to be building. So the number of single family homes it's just not even close to keeping up. And then you combine all of those factors with the amount of institutional buying. Southern Washington last year, 52% of the homes that sold in Southern Washington were not owner occupied. At no point did the actual owner move in. So they were either bought as rentals, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, institutional investors, but it was wild. I mean, Portland was much, much lower. It was like 7 or 8%. But like Southern Washington and a bunch of other places across the country, we saw these just wild amounts of investor buying during that period. And it's just added to competition.
And that's you mean that's more like big corporate investor buying, right? Like that 60 Minutes episode from a couple months ago.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much competition, and it's especially in Portland, we're trying to be so careful about how we grow that there's very little incentive to build single family housing right now. And because of that, it feels like we're just going to be behind indefinitely. I mean, I think they said if we picked up pace, we're still 5 years out from producing enough homes for the number of household creations that are happening, which is kind of back to your point about population boom and the different generations and who's coming of age at different times. So yeah, the availability issue is, I think, what will for a long time insulate us from any significant pullback. Is there's just not enough houses.
I want to take a pause here, but I also want to talk about that Craft 3 ADU financing program as well. And let's put a pin in this, but there is a Oregon area bank that specializes in infill development lending to single family, to private individuals, and they can finance 100% of the creation of 1 or even 2 ADUs on your property. So that is another thing that is a little bit more of a complicated and long-term house hack, but unbelievably valuable. But let's put a pause on this, and maybe we can do another recording and talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.